Hi and welcome to our guide to the NetSupport DNA Education Edition. The purpose of this video is to provide you with a really high-level overview of the key features and functions included within NetSupport DNA. Once you've reviewed this video, there are additional videos covering each of the components in much more detail. So let's start. As you can see on the screen, we have our welcome screen. And the welcome screen within NetSupport DNA provides us with real-time stats covering each of the main components, whether it's PCs active, packages deployed, changes to hardware, printer stats, safeguarding concerns raised, and much more. And as you'd expect, the information shown on this main screen can be adapted and adjusted to suit our date criteria, whether it's stats for the last few months, for this week, for today, and so on. Down the left-hand side of our DNA console, you'll see we have our school hierarchy. In this case, being an example database, you'll see we have some departments. One is the school trust, and under that we have school number 1. Next to it, it denotes the number of students we have on our test system, and we can also see each of our students broken down by year groups. Below that, we have dynamic groups, and these are containers that constantly change based on the conditions set out in each. So in this case here, any systems discovered that are 64-bit will be accessible within this dynamic group, any Android devices within this, OS X this, and so on. Naturally, you can create your own dynamic groups to display here so that you can always customize the solution to meet exactly the needs of your own school or trust. As well as looking at everything within DNA in a PC context, NetSupport DNA also lets us look at everything from a user perspective. When we select the user menu, our view changes, and now we see individual users within our domain or structure rather than PCs. For any particular user, we can right-click, we can manage their user account details, for example their AD credentials, reset their passwords and more, or we can edit their details on the fly. You'll notice one of our safeguarding features also allows us to mark individual students as vulnerable so that we can actually monitor and identify those more easily within the system. In addition to users, we can also look at SNMP enabled devices that have been discovered across the network. In this example here, we've got a folder with our network-enabled printers, and you'll see as we select a printer, on the right-hand side we get the very latest information from that network device, toner supply and more. We can do the same for switches and so on, and we can see activity against the individual ports and much more. And finally, we have a discovered mode, which allows us to constantly monitor the network and identify any new devices that join the network at any given time. Once they're identified, we can select and choose to deploy a NetSupport DNA agent onto any chosen device. As this is very much a whistle-stop overview, let's jump back to our PC view, and you'll see by default from our home screen that we can click on any of these components and it will take us directly to the component in question. So let's work our way along our top menu, and as you can see, from home through to software distribution, we have each of the main components that makes up NetSupport DNA. So first is our Explorer view. And when we jump to our Explorer view, you'll see we have a detailed summary of all devices in this first column with their department, stroke location, their IP address, connectivity details, logged on user information, OS, and then we have details that cover things like active notifications, as well as what policies are currently in force. Let's drill down in our school to perhaps the curriculum department. And you'll see in the curriculum department we have a list of PCs. This one is currently powered off. And for each of these PCs, we can see there are no current notifications, but they do have active policies in place. In this case, power on and power off have been set, an inactivity policy is operational, web restrictions are operational, and we have our endpoint security enabled as well. Again, as we add additional policies, we'll be able to see these quick indicators change. If we jump up a tree slightly to our example department, you'll see we can now spot the difference between machines that aren't in the curriculum department and those that are. And any with our highlight here, which we can turn on and off from our top menu, give us an indicator of any machines that have current notifications. In this case, we have 2 PCs where keyword phrases have been triggered within our safeguarding view. Of course, it could be that an alert has been triggered or there's a request to authorize a USB device on a given PC. Now, as well as looking from a detail point of view, we can also view our machines within a department from an icon base, or we can jump and we can see dynamic thumbnails from each desktop computer. If we jump to our thumbnail view, you'll see here we have all of our computer screens, except for the one PC that was off. In the case of IMVH 577, you'll see that this is a machine with multiple monitors, so I can now click and view between the different screens. Naturally, I can change the size of the thumbnails that are being displayed, and I can also change the update frequency as well. So NetSupport DNA within the Explorer mode provides a really quick and easy way to get a sense of activity that's happening on the network right now. As you'd expect in NetSupport DNA, if we want to take things a step further, we can select a PC, right-click, and now we can quickly distribute software to an individual PC, check the agent status, launch remote control, file transfer or remote command prompt activities, chat or message with users, or if it's a PC that's currently on or off, we can also do one-to-one power management as well as our normal power management feature that's included within NetSupport DNA. So a really powerful component and suite. After that, we have our user detail mode, and our user detail mode simply gives us a summary of those machines and users that have logged in today, again, between 1 and 7 days, 8 days or later, as well as a summary of our activity. If we select an individual user, we can also get a breakdown overview of their individual login and logout times. Now, when we jump to our hardware inventory mode, one of the key components within NetSupport DNA, you'll see by default we've now got a summary for this department based on our CPU types. And we can see a detailed list of all machines with CPU type, in this case Intel Atom. We can expand and we can see the individual PCs that make that criteria. On the right hand side on our filter, you'll see we can pick different categories, perhaps operating system, and now we can break down all of the machines based on that OS type. And again, we can drill down and see which individual PCs meet that criteria. Of course, I can pick an individual PC. When I do so, I get a detailed hardware inventory for that machine. Now, NetSupport DNA goes one step further than basic hardware inventory. So in addition to our overview, we can also add peripheral devices against the individual machines. We can edit any of our inventory data, and we can also assign contracts against machines. So we can put information to do with lease and maintenance details. We can attach supporting PDF files and documents in terms of the contract associated machine. We can also store values as well as cost center and accounting information as well. So all in all, NetSupport DNA provides a perfect connector between our accounting and our IT inventory systems. As you'd expect, as well as being a Windows-based product, NetSupport DNA also includes standalone inventory components for Android, iOS, Mac, Linux, and Windows Mobile. Let's jump back up our tree to our example department, and we'll move to our software inventory component. Now, our software inventory component displays information at 4 different levels. So our first level is viewing our program information, the kind of information we'd expect to see within add-remove programs on a typical Windows PCs. We can drill down below that to see the details of the individual applications. So perhaps in the best example, programs might be Microsoft Office, applications may be Word and Excel. We can also go a step further. We can view individual files stored on local machines, a fantastic way of identifying student content and coursework that hasn't been stored on a network drive but has been left on local machines, or of course conversely wasted disk space from video downloads and other resources. And finally, as well as files, we can also view hotfixes, again across a group, department or on individual machines, so we can see exactly the status of all devices. Now let's jump back to our program view. And if we sort based on our installation summary, you'll see top of the list we have NetSupport Manager and NetSupport DNA, our example programs. And NetSupport DNA currently has 500 licenses assigned to it. If we jump to our inventory component menu and select our program manager, we can jump to programs and we can search for our product, NetSupport DNA, like so. Here's our product, and if we look at our license information, you'll see here is the license, here's the supplier, and we can select the license, edit it, and you'll see here's all the information stored against the license. The purchase cost, the cost center, we can store any supporting documents, whether it's from a local or third-party supplier, whether it has an active maintenance contract, and much more. So NetSupport DNA provides a perfect software licensing and asset management tool to support your school's infrastructure. As you'd expect, because licenses can be assigned against individual departments as well as PCs, it works beautifully for multi-site schools or academy trusts. Once we've looked at software, and again, bear in mind this is a quick overview of the main features, the next step is our USB device control. So within NetSupport DNA, we have the ability to monitor the use of USB devices or removable storage devices. So both memory sticks and things like phones that connect to devices for access to their portable storage. And within NetSupport DNA, not only can we monitor where USB devices are used and on which machines, but we also provide the ability to manage and control devices. The school typically at the beginning of the year might select memory sticks for deployment to all staff, and they can be individually approved on the network for use only by members of the department staff or for only on staff laptops and devices. So let's take an example here. You'll see we have a storage device here for a TDK USB flash drive. We have the ability to choose to either authorize it by department or by user. So by department, we can drill down, as we've seen on our hierarchy tree over here, and we can pick within school one, we want to approve it for these department machines. Perhaps we don't want to approve it on these machines, so it's just for our testing team in this example here, or we can flip the other side and we can pick individual users and actually approve it just for them to use on their machines. So it's a great way to ensure that USB devices for staff can be prevented from access for students who find the USB stick, but also can also be used to prevent the use of memory sticks, perhaps in exam conditions or in certain classrooms. When somebody arrives at school with a new memory stick, as well as being able to automatically offer approval for that device, we can also provide the option to simply approve a USB stick for just the current day. Again, an easy way of making sure we don't have to remember to disable access at the end of day. Having done our USB control, we're going to skip eSafety briefly, and we'll just talk about some of the other management tools within NetSupport DNA. The alerting component allows us to track and monitor all activity that happens across our network. The key to the alerting component within NetSupport DNA is about proactivity. We can monitor all sorts of different stats and activities occurring across the network, and then ensure if any meet the conditions that have been set, emails, alerts can be sent automatically to designated staff. At the current time, you'll see the example here, we have a number of console alerts set. So let me know if any new operators for NetSupport DNA are created, if any new software distribution packages are created or deleted, and so on. On our server, let us know if there's been any attempts to access what is a restricted website or application, or perhaps any PCs that have been booted in safe mode for any reason. On an individual PC level, we currently have it enabled to view things such as if print queues get too large or disk space falls below on a PC. There are literally 100+ different alerts that can be set and activated on the system to proactively warn you of any issues that may occur. The history component, as you'd expect, simply provides a detailed history of any changes for the selected hardware within your tree. And within the history, we can also filter to decide which types of items we're interested. Typically, if we have a network with dynamic addressing, we may not want to know about a change of an IP address. Similarly, we may not want to know about changes to things like screen resolution. Other changes, particularly relating to hardware itself, are areas where we may wish to ensure that we have active and proactive monitoring. The energy monitoring feature builds on the concept of a monitoring tool within NetSupport DNA. It starts by giving us an overview of the energy use, again for any target PCs, based on in and out of our defined working day. If we drop down to our curriculum team, we can drill down and we can see for each PC, the time it's been powered on, how much of that was in hours, out of hours, what energy was used, the cost of that energy, and the CO2 footprint. Now that's all well and good, but of course what power management does is highlight the need for us to effectively control the use of devices within our school. So within the energy component, we have the ability to open our settings dialog, and as you'll see here, we have the ability to enforce power management across the school. In this example, it will apply to just this department. We can choose when machines are powered on. Perhaps we won't power machines on at the weekend, and we can decide at what time machines are powered off by default. So perhaps in this case here, all our machines will power off at 6 p.m. by default. Of course, if a user is on the machine at the time, we'll be giving them some options for them to suspend or delay that. If a machine's logged off, what shall we do? We'll shut the machine down. If a machine at the point where we power down is currently logged on, then perhaps we'll just log the machine off or suspend it. Now, power management policies are an incredibly effective way of reducing operational costs, by wasted energy use. But of course, they also need to be intuitive and seamless. So within NetSupport DNA, we also have an option to prevent power on routines operating during the holidays. And within the holiday mode, we can simply select holidays, set your holiday periods, and we can define everything from our holidays to our half terms and bank holidays. And that will ensure that power management isn't operational at times where it isn't appropriate. If we build beyond that, we also have the ability under our power management to provide inactivity monitors. And our inactivity monitors apply for any given period of time. Let's take our monitor and say from 6 o'clock through to midnight, our inactivity monitor will identify any machine that is inactive for 30 minutes. And we have the option whether we want to suspend the machine, shut it down, or do nothing if the machine is currently in a logged off state. And again, if it's logged on, we can log it off, suspend it, and more. Combined together, NetSupport DNA provides a really intuitive way of managing our energy use across the school network. We can ensure all classroom PCs are started automatically at the beginning of day, are powered down at the end of day, and if they're not being used during the day, they can either be put into a suspended state or powered off to ensure that we have the most efficient use of our IT assets. As well as our monitoring modes, we also have our monitoring and management modes. So internet metering provides a really simple and effective way of monitoring internet activity for all students across the school. As you can see, for any student, we can drill down and we can see what individual, the PC owner, the department, start and end time, and the active time they were on any given website. Now, of course, the key when we say active time is not simply the time between when the page was open and closed, but it's the time that that page was in foreground and actively being used by the user. If we drill down to an individual student and we drill down, you'll see we can see the actual title of the page with a clickable link for us to review as well. Now, monitoring internet use is one thing. Having the ability to control usage is far more important. So under our internet metering, we have the ability to click on our restrictions, and we can create both approved and restricted site lists. We can simply scan through a list of all sites that have been discovered so far, in other words, sites that students have visited, select a site and add it to our approved or our restricted lists. Or we can manually add our own to make our own white and black lists at the same time. Once we have our lists of approved and restricted sites, via our settings menu, we can choose to apply our policies. In the example here, you'll see that we have unrestricted access throughout the day, and then we have a restriction preventing access to websites from 8 o'clock in the evening. If I wanted to prevent access to just those websites that are in my blocked list, I could select blocked list and say at these times of day, I don't want students to be able to access it. Or I could say, I only want students to access approved websites. And again, I could apply that across the day and apply a different set of restrictions. Again, the beauty of NetSupport DNA is making the management of eSafety across the school as simple and easy to deploy as possible. Now, once you're familiar with how to do internet metering, then perhaps no surprise, application metering gives you exactly the same tools and overview. Again, we can see individual PCs, we can see a breakdown of the application, the company the application is made by, the active time, and the number of times that application has been used. And if we drill down here for something like NetSupport DNA, we can drill down and see all the different PCs, the logged on user, time, version, active time, and much more, exactly as before. And we can, again, control this by our date range. As you'd expect, we can also apply restrictions. So we can pick an application, NetSupport DNA console. And we now want to control who can use the NetSupport DNA console. As you see, we can expand through our departments, and we can say within our departments, we only want users in the group example, that's 11 users, to be able to access the console. A perfect way of ensuring certain applications can only be used by staff, not students, or are restricted to specific faculty departments for their use. And again, we can choose whether we have unrestricted access or whether we want to block application use at certain times of the day. Again, NetSupport DNA is really simple and effective to ensure we can enforce our application management tools. So last but not least, in terms of our components, is our eSafety component. And perhaps uniquely, this component is really designed to be used much more by the safeguarding leads within the school rather than specifically the IT team. With that in mind, you can create individual safeguarding operator accounts, and when your safeguarding team sign in, they'll see only this component, and they'll be self-sufficient for managing the content, the keywords, and so on within the safeguarding component without putting additional overhead on the IT team. Now, within the safeguarding component, it does all sorts of things. So this is a really high-level overview of some of the key bits, which you can then follow up with a more detailed video tour to see how you actually can enable all of the functionality within the safeguarding component. But at a high level, as you can see on the screen here, NetSupport DNA has been busy monitoring the keywords and phrases that students type and matching those against a phrase list that we pre-supply. The phrase list is broken down into lots of very clear categories: bullying, drugs, eating disorders, grooming, homophobia, thinking about prevent duty, radicalisation, racism, self-harm and beyond. And for any category, we can expand and we can see what PC, who the logged on user was, what the phrase was that was matched, what they searched or typed on their computer. And within NetSupport DNA, we can monitor on 3 levels: what somebody types, in this case here, where to buy cannabis, what somebody searched for, this is the title of a web page, Craig's Weed, and what they copied, and this is some text that was copied off a web page. In each case, we can see what website or application they were using, the date and time, the level of the match, and the priority of the keyword as defined on the system. And if the keyword is set as high, you'll see that a screenshot is also captured. If we select the screenshot, you'll see it gives me not only the details of when this incident occurred and when it's triggered, but it also provides me below with my screenshot, so I can see exactly what the student was doing at the time. Now I have this information, of course, I can save it, I can email it to a colleague for follow-up with the student, I can save it to my clipboard, and much more. What we found, of course, was that feedback from safeguarding leads was this is great knowing the individual incidents that have triggered, but what we also want to know is about trends within school, so we can identify activities that students are starting to show greater interest in, and of course, as a result, where there's higher levels of safeguarding risk for our students. So within NetSupport DNA, you'll see we have our phrase cloud, and if we select our phrase cloud, it quickly defines on the screen for us a very visual summary of all the keywords that have been triggered. The larger the keyword, the greater the number of incidents. If we select a keyword, there's been 8 occurrences for Animal Liberation Front. And here I can see examples again of on what PC, on what user, what was typed, where they were sourced, and the date and time. And if I wish, I can choose to say, actually, I want to stop monitoring this keyword. Or if I also wish, I can review the list and say this particular example was a false alarm. I'll mark it as so, and it will remove it from my reports. Again, it's a really, really powerful feature and ensures that schools can look either at school level or on individual student group level to see what the trends are, what the top topics of concern are, and maybe this then becomes a catalyst for whole school assemblies or individual follow-up with students. Now, of course, this is very much a reactive tool. We're looking and seeing what students are searching for and making management decisions based on that. But NetSupport also includes a proactive feature, the report a concern feature. And as you can see briefly on the screen here, we have a number of concerns that have been raised by students and directed to trusted members of staff. The way the system works is that we define contacts on the system, which are individual members of staff, and those are then presented to students so that they can select a member of staff they wish to report a concern to. Alongside their concern, they can also include screenshots, extra information to support their concern, perhaps information such as a Facebook blog, as we can see here, that students sent through to a member of staff to know that they're being bullied by other students around the school. Once we have this information, the staff can track their updates and notes, they can see all the history that's gone on, and they can continue to keep a full record of all safeguarding activities that followed on from this particular concern. We also got feedback from safeguarding teams that said, as well as having this tool, it would be nice if we could share and make available to all students a range of approved safeguarding resources. And again, there is an obligation on schools to ensure that all students can access safeguarding resources from anywhere within the school premises. So as you'll see, we now have a feature that allows us to publicise. This can be accessed from each student desktop from the NetSupport DNA student icon, and you'll see that from here, the students can have access to a range of approved safeguarding resources, which staff at the school can also edit and add their own resources to as well. This is updated on a regular basis by NetSupport. The print monitoring feature in NetSupport DNA is designed to give us an overview and a sense of what kind of print costs and usage is going on across the school. Again, in our example here, we have a couple of printers with some records of some print costs today, and you'll see we can expand for each printer and we can see the PC name, the department, the logged on user, what was printed, and the associated cost. Of course, we can control what we put in the system for our example costs for black and white versus colour prints and more. And again, DNA's purpose here is to simply give schools a sense of where their print costs are, so they can then choose to make steps, if appropriate, to manage more closely their printer usage. Software distribution is the last of the main components within NetSupport DNA, and as the name implies, it allows a school IT manager to create a package for a particular application and then deploy it as and when required to selected systems across the school network. Within NetSupport DNA, we provide a number of different concepts. So when we select a package, in this case we have some predefined for NetSupport student and tutor software, a software package can either be pushed in real time to a selected range of PCs for deployment right now. It can be scheduled, in which case it will be scheduled to deploy at a time that suits, perhaps after hours, or it can be advertised. You'll see the option up here, and in advertise mode, staff within a particular department can pull down any applications that have been marked as being available for them to use. We also have the concept of warehouses, and in very simple terms, that allows a software package to be deployed at the central site, perhaps in a trust, and if that's pushed out to all desktop computers in remote schools, rather than it being sent to each machine over a slower connection, it will be sent out to one machine at each local school site, which will then act as a warehouse and distribute the software package on to all the other computers. It's a really simple and effective tool, and includes an application recorder, so we can record the steps that you need to install an application on one machine and use that to pre-configure the application package ready for deployment on other PCs. Now, as well as our quick, and I appreciate a really quick overview of the core features, within NetSupport DNA we also have a range of tools that are provided. From our tools menu, you'll see we have all sorts of different features. Perhaps one of the most important is our query tool, and our query tool allows us to create reports and views on the fly from any data stored within NetSupport DNA, but without the need for you to be an SQL or database guru. So from here we can simply select a PC group, in this case PC information, and if we select computer name and we select some additional information that might go next to it, perhaps we'll have their IP address, and we'll have something like the last logon name, memory total for a PC, and perhaps the OS name. If we run that now, you'll see very quickly we create our own custom view. And that report can be printed, exported, or it can be saved and associated against any of the components within NetSupport DNA, so that you can access this report at a given time. Similarly, of course, you can apply conditional values. So if we want to pick on machines that only have a certain amount of memory, we can add to the list there, and we can say is greater than or equal to 3000. And then if we run our query again, you'll see we're only going to pick up machines with more memory than a certain amount. So again, the query tool goes into far more detail, and there's a separate video to cover it in much more information for you, but provides a really effective way of accessing all of this valuable data that's stored within NetSupport DNA. The settings for NetSupport DNA are all accessed from a single menu, so you can see very quickly and easily where all the key features are, which components are enabled, and any restrictions that are in force. If you want to make sure that your tree reflects your AD structure, then simply access your Active Directory box, and from there you can enable it to lay it out to mirror your AD infrastructure, for example. The operator configuration is all provided within the system here, and as you'd expect within the AD infrastructure, if we have a look at creating a new user, and we'll make them an administrator, we'll have a look at a role, you'll see that within the summary here we can provide limited access or complete access to each and every feature within each and every component. Perhaps more importantly, we can ensure that staff at one school can only see data for their school, whereas staff at the trust can see an overarching level of data. Similarly, with the safeguarding overview, we can ensure that safeguarding leads can either see data for just students in the school or even for specific year groups. A really flexible and granular approach. As well as our standard desktop app and desktop agents, NetSupport DNA includes a mobile console for iOS and Android. And one of the beauties of that feature is the ability to walk up to a PC and scan a barcode to instantly see the hardware inventory, the software inventory, and any active alerts. Now that barcode can either be displayed on the screen directly from the agent on each PC, as you can see here, and we can scan that from our mobile app, or we have the ability to create barcodes. And if we select print barcodes, we can simply pick individual PCs. Let's drill down in our trust again to certain computers that we might have. And if we pick a PC such as this one, and so on, you'll see we've got a list of all the PCs we've added, and against them we can now produce, based against some standard label sizes that you can customize, barcodes ready for printing, and of course we can add some extra information such as the phone or contact details for the tech support team. Again, a really simple and effective way of adding value to ensure that when you walk around the school and you see servers or desktop devices, you can quickly gather all the key information you need to make informed decisions and address issues that may have occurred. As well as that, we have our discovery and deployment tool to ensure that we can monitor the network, spot any new devices, and of course deploy out the NetSupport DNA agent at the beginning. We have our custom user details, so we can choose to capture additional information on the system. We can of course manage our database. We can schedule queries and reports to run in advance. We can deliver acceptable use policies across the school. So if we pull up our acceptable use policies here and we want to create a new one, which is perhaps a pupil acceptable use agreement, we provide you with some standard policies. Once you're happy, of course, you can paste in something that's been approved by your governing body. You can then decide whether you want to give this policy a name. Again, we'll just give it a test name for now. And we can then control whether it's shown every time someone logs in or just once at the beginning of the school year, and whether they need any kind of acknowledgement. Tick a box, provide their name and so on. And then, of course, finally, what we do if the user's not willing to agree with the acceptable use policy. Lots of schools use this at the beginning of the autumn term to ensure that all staff and students agree with the terms that are required by the school or the trust for the use of their computer systems. And finally, we have the ability here to configure our remote control. So NetSupport DNA comes with the options of both NetSupport School and NetSupport Manager. Both options provide the ability to configure remote control. So once you've deployed NetSupport, you can simply configure, point yourself at the NetSupport Manager or NetSupport School Tech Console agent, and you'll be able to remote control each of your PCs. We can message and chat, or we can configure things like our SNMP server or our gateways. Gateways are unique to NetSupport DNA and allow us to seamlessly manage lots of remote sites back to a central database. We've mentioned our queries, but in addition, we also have a reporting component in NetSupport DNA that ensures we can produce crystal report summaries of all of the key information available in our system. If we jump to our hardware and select reports, you'll see that we can pick up a summary report. Perhaps we'll pick something like CPU, and again, we'll have a report with a breakdown of our CPU or memory or other information. And again, we can then look and get a drill down of individual PCs that meet each of the criteria we've defined in our reports. A really good way of producing management information on the fly. So that pretty much covers our very, very whistle-stop overview of NetSupport DNA. I'd encourage you to download and evaluate a product, and you'll see from the NetSupport DNA website there are a range of video tours covering each of the components in much more detail. Again, thanks for your time, and I hope it was helpful.